Hi everyone, welcome to our GEW session on Why Tulsa for Entrepreneurs, led by TyPros, one of our favorite partner organizations. If you haven't been at a GEW event so far this week, welcome. We are excited to have you. If you are back again, welcome back. We are about halfway through our week and we still have lots of exciting sessions coming up. Lots on learning about funding. There's a session happening tonight at 5 and another one happening tomorrow in the afternoon. Schedules are available at the front desk or at 36n.co/GEW. And then without further ado, we're going to introduce Stephen, and he is going to introduce the rest of our panel for our session today.
Appreciate it, thank you. Well, excited to see people in person. I'm not going to lie, that is just the funniest thing I ever say out loud, but COVID certainly has made this interesting, so we are thrilled that we could get some people here and then really to share this awesome panel that we have today, and hope you'll enjoy it. So my name is Stephen Elias. I'll be moderating at any time during this. If you do have a pressing question and it is in between some of my kind of pre-canned, please raise your hand and speak up. We'd love to hear from you and get something specific. So without further ado, want to get right into this. So the purpose of today's presentation is really talk about why Tulsa. And I think it's very easy to classify Tulsa along that broader swath of what we call flyover country. And for entrepreneurs, that can sometimes just sound like a death sentence, because if you're not in an Austin, a Palo Alto, a Boston, a New York City, sometimes it can seem like you don't have the resources here to start a successful company or grow it to something, but we're here to change that. And especially with the time of COVID and transitions moving a lot of people from these major hubs to, you can work and start a business anywhere. And in fact, it's actually advantageous, cost of living, other resources. That's really accelerated this movement. So we're excited to share these panelists today. So without me talking and word vomiting anymore, I'm gonna get right into it. So introducing our speakers in order from closest to further away from me, we have Clay Holt. He's with the Coronavirus Relief Funds Manager for the city of Tulsa, recently changed to that position. So I'm excited to hear his work there. We have, Charity Marcus, the founder and CEO of Avenue Consulting and the founder of Black Women Business Owners of America. Hannah DeMoot, who is the outgoing chair for the business development crew for TyPros, as well as a commercial mortgage broker for McGraw Commercial Properties. And then we have Jessica Lozano, the Latino outreach specialist for Blue Cross and Blue Shield. So they do so much more than what I just described, so I didn't want to speak for them. So right now I want to have them briefly give a broader introduction and we'll get right into questions. So, all right, Jessica, we're going to start with you.
Of course.
Yeah. I said you last, but I got you first with your bio. So.
Oh, the power button. Okay. Just to make sure. Okay, so you just want to know what kind of all involved in?
Yes, please. Yeah, broader biography than what I just gave.
Okay, so I've been with Blue Cross for 12 years now as their Latino outreach specialist, and I am the incoming chair for the Tulsa Latin American Chamber of Commerce. So I'll be the first Latina ever. It's always been male. Super excited about that. But then very involved also in the with process. I've been given the opportunity to really expand on what other ways we can help our Latino community in Oklahoma and improving the health. So very much involved in anything that has to do with the Latino community, I can help you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hannah DeMute. Like Stephen said, I will be rolling off the Tulsa Young Professionals Board this year. I am currently involved. I have my own small business, so I am a commercial real estate broker. I am one of about 5 under the age of 35 in Tulsa currently active. There are less than 20% of female brokers in the community, and so I'm really just trying to make my mark and show that women and just different types of people can do an industry that's predominantly, well, it is dominated by men. So I am excited to be here and excited to share.
Just finished your first year, right?
Yes, I have beat the odds. So if I can do 2 more years, they say on average 80% of commercial brokers quit in their first 3 years. And so I'm a third of the way there and I'm excited to be here.
You got this. That's amazing. Again, my name is Charity Marquez. I am an entrepreneur. Not only am I the co-founder of Black Women Business Owners of America, which we'll talk more about that as Stephen is asking us questions, but I also do public relations. I have my own PR firm. And then as well, I do multiple areas of consulting from politics and government to economic development, to business and entrepreneurship consulting.
Great. And like Stephen said, my name is Clay Hulk, and I'm the Coronavirus Relief Fund's program manager for the city of Tulsa. Just as background, the city received about $31 million in funding from the state, which we are using to really combat the first and second order effects of the coronavirus. I would say probably more appropriate for this conversation, however, in my previous role, I was a senior policy advisor for small business entrepreneurship and economic innovation here with the city of Tulsa. Very long title, but no, in that capacity, one of my favorite parts was really getting to know the ecosystem builders that we had here, like Tammy Torkelson, who I see out in the audience, or like Hannah, or like Stephen, or like Charity, really helping to build something special here.
I appreciate it. Well, so one of the first questions, and this is going to sound like a broken record for all of these panels sometimes, but it's an important topic to cover first, and that is why Tulsa? Why Tulsa for entrepreneurship? And I want to get Clay's thoughts first, not just because you're closest to me, but you had a nice segue right there on some of the resources that Tulsa has, but just succinctly, especially with COVID happening right now, I think everyone's reevaluating where they would want to start or where they would want another location should they grow their business. So try and give a little snippet of your opinion on why Tulsa is an impassioned place for something like that.
Okay, yeah. So I'm an outsider. I am originally from Southern Alabama. My wife grew up just outside of Tulsa, and so we moved here. But the reason why we moved here, I think, is it really gets at your question. You know, before coming to Tulsa, we had lived in lots of cities. When I came here, I felt this real tangible civic pride. And I think it in a way that I don't think I'd ever felt in any other city. I think in some ways it was almost kind of, I don't know, not personified, but it was made physical by the new Tulsa flag and just kind of seeing that everywhere. Tulsa is a place that always intends to be punching above its weight, and it is full of people who want to work together to make this place better. You know, one of the real pleasures that I had in kind of working with these ecosystem builders was how low the egos were in the room. And I came in expecting like turf wars and sharp elbows. Nothing could have been further from the truth. It truly is a place where everyone is rowing in the same direction. And I think here you really do have this sort of strategic outlook. We have people here who are just thinking about sort of what's the immediate target, but thinking about what does this look like in the long term. So that to me is, that sort of foresight is something that I think is actually really rare. And I think the passion that you have here to drive towards that is what really makes Tulsa unique as a place for entrepreneurs.
Good. As an entrepreneur and having to make that decision, for me, I was looking at the vast opportunities, especially when it came to the industry that I was initially going into. When you're looking at other places that are nationally known for being entrepreneurship hubs, small business hubs, it's saturated. And I feel like here in Tulsa, there's a lot of opportunity just from the ground up to be a person to build foundations here when it comes to entrepreneurship. And yes, there are people that definitely kicked it off, especially when you start talking about the whole downtown revitalization. It started with that, but to see downtown coming back to life, and then to see all of the activity and the opportunities swirling from it, I feel like even still to this day, Tulsa is a great place to set foundations and be that person that can pioneer something here in Tulsa.
Yeah, I think a really exciting thing, I just pulled up, I posted this yesterday on my LinkedIn. Tulsa made the list for National Geographic as they revealed the best destinations for 2021. We were one of 5 cities in the continental US to make the list. And that alone, I mean, when you talk about France, Denmark, Germany, Romania, Hungary, British Columbia, and Tulsa, that to me, as someone who's been here my entire life, is super exciting. Just like Charity had mentioned, before I started my own business, I spent 7 years in high-end residential leasing in downtown Tulsa. And the line I used to tell people, I mean, a decade ago, you couldn't pay me to come downtown. And at that point in time, I was paying to live downtown. And so we were bringing hundreds of doors, I mean, I call them doors, you would call them people, hundreds of people to the market, and they were paying, I mean, more than their mortgage. And so for me to have a family relocate to South Tulsa into downtown and into an apartment, I would have people that were my parents' age, and they would say, I haven't lived in an apartment since college. And they were relocating by the truckloads to come down here. And so that's just how, obviously on a national and even a global scale, Tulsa is really leading its mark. But then here as a personal experience, seeing people, you know, sell their home and live in an apartment is just super exciting and literally a block away. Used to be one of my properties, so.
Well, I think my opinion's a little biased. I was born and raised here in Tulsa, so I love Tulsa. I think it's an amazing place to, you know, raise a family, and, you know, I'm expecting a baby next month, so I'm super excited. But I will say that even for Latino businesses, it's so welcoming. We have, you know, at one point, even our previous governor, Mary Fallon, had even talked in the State of the State how we have been recognized in Tulsa and in Oklahoma City for having the highest Latino-owned businesses. So I think that on itself just lets you know, like, we love Tulsa, and Latinos, it's, if you treat the families good, if their families are happy, they're going to open their businesses there, they're going to live there. You know, I remember having a conversation with Francisco Ibarra, which is the owner of Supermercado Morelos, which if you've never been there, you have to try that store out. It's so cool. But yeah, a whole bunch of different products. But one of the things he had said is, like, you know, I could have chosen anywhere. I could have chosen to live anywhere. And he was like, but I decided to move to Tulsa. There's just something about family here that I know my family's going to be well taken care of. So I think just making sure that our city stays that way, very welcoming, I think we'll have a lot more Latino businesses opening up.
One of the things I love, get it back on. One of the things that I love is the t-shirt that you see around sometimes. It's like Tulsa is the next, and then like Austin is crossed out and Nashville is crossed out, and then it just says Tulsa. And I think there's actually like a lot to that. Like there is this truly distinctive spirit. We kind of try to punch above our weight, but we also are not, we're not just copying somebody else. We truly are forging our own path.
Yeah. No, so I'll ask this to whoever on the panel wants to answer this as well, and I think this opens up to the next segment, which is resources. And I think the typical person who will attend something like this is either starting a business, they've thought about it, or they're growing it, right? And for some way, shape, or form, we found ourselves in Tulsa. Either you grew up here or you have just moved here and you have some belief in it. But for a new business to start up during the time of Corona, daunting task. What resources recently would you say that people should be really on the lookout for to get a business off the ground with such increased volatility? And that is open to anyone, whoever wants to take that.
Okay, well, I'll go first. One of the things as an entrepreneur that I faced and struggled with was finding resources. I mean, I started my very first business in 2009, and I was literally just Googling it. I say, sometimes I live with people and I'm like, oh, I had a Google business because everything I did, I was just Googling it all day. And so one thing, as a minority, as a Black woman, it was hard. And so for me, I wanted to become a resource. My business partner and my co-founder, she felt the same way. And to find somebody else in Tulsa where when we were in spaces, we were the only Black women entrepreneurs, like not even women in a space. And we were in two separate spaces, which she does real estate as well too. And how to get resources to more women like us, and then as well be a resource. And so that's what Black Women Business Owners of America does. We're here to help entrepreneurs get access to these various resources. And even for us as an organization, you know, we have to partner with other resources to do that. You know, we have a partnership here with 36. For the whole time we've started, they've been a resource with us. And it's been a great resource because women come here and they're like, oh, I never knew this place existed. I'm like, and for me, I know about it. And I was like, how did I know about this place? It's like in the middle of downtown. But, you know, just having those types, being able to connect people. And I'll say for business owners, especially when you're on a shoestring budget, Tulsa Economic Development Corp, for me, is a key resource that small businesses need to know about, especially when you're trying to get business loans. You know, going to a bank and you're having to put up collateral, or you don't have that kind of collateral as an entrepreneur, there's a resource there to get funding. And funding is key to having successful businesses. Yes, you know, being able to reach your clients and all that. But if you don't have the funding to get your business going, to buy product, to buy the necessary equipment or technology that you need, it's a hard road. So all of this, and I'm not going to name them all because everybody else knows them, and I want to leave some for everybody else. I'll say our important is Tulsa Economic Development Corporation.
Yeah.
I think a big thing for me, and this is kind of an indirect resource, so obviously being a representative of Tulsa Young Professionals and Type Rose, and you know, we are an extension of the chamber, a really great opportunity that Type Rose partners with Leadership Tulsa is called Get On Board. It's a program where they place young professionals on local nonprofit boards. You're probably thinking, Hannah, how does that affect my business? I'm so glad you asked. I got placed on the board at the YWCA this year, and the mission statement of the Y obviously is to empower women and eliminate racism. And I never knew that in 2020 that was going to be such an impactful statement, especially in our community. And as a business owner, I'm really asking myself, how do I take part in this? What's going on socially and personally? And we all know that the philanthropic community in Tulsa is very vast. But not only have I gotten training and resources just being a board intern through this program, but I'm sitting on a board with movers and shakers in my community, and we were willing to have conversations that were difficult, but they needed to happen. And because of that, an indirect just resource of that, I have been able to staff and start my business, I don't want to say the right way, but in a much more intentional way by being on that board and by being around these other business leaders that were willing to have these conversations that do affect their community. So I always encourage people to get involved, some kind of nonprofit locally, because not only personally are you going to be impacted, but I guarantee you're going to come out with some tools and resources that help you personally and professionally.
I'm going to come back to something Charity said, which is funny. When you asked the question, I wrote down TEDC.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
yeah, actually the capital angle is of course tremendous. I think actually there is a new emerging kind of technical assistance angle, which is just, I think is ultimately going to be just as impactful. Shell Academy has just recently started her, I think, second or third iteration of Small Business 101. And it truly is that. It is small business lessons in creating and growing your own small business from the assumption that you're starting at the ground level, right? And I think that's important. You don't know what you don't know. And so you have somebody who has been around small businesses for such a long time. And she has this just tremendous empathy to know what it is you're going through. I mean, Rose in the Capitol at TBC is incredible, and that is, of course, a huge portion. I think the technical assistance side is, while it is new, I think it is going to be just as impactful.
And let me just piggyback on that real quick. So Shelly Hadley is a community member and she's with TBEC. She also works with Matisse, and Matisse offers coaching. So I'm actually in her small business coaching cohort. There's the Posse for women and a Tribe for men. So even to piggyback on what you said, if you need or are interested in coaching for your small business with other small business owners, I'm happy to talk more about that.
And you did bring up a good point too, because they also, TEDC also has somebody there by the, I think he's still there, but his name is Bob Marshall, and he helps with writing business plans. So TEDC is very holistic. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, I will say for Latino business owners, it's kind of hard. Some of these resources, because they only do it in English. I love Shelly. I've done her program as well, but it was all in English and they don't really have like a Spanish opportunity. So that's kind of, I've been working hard on that, trying to figure out ways that we can help support our Latino business owners. So my husband owns his home company. He has, a carpentry company, which is, believe it or not, during COVID, he's been so busy. Everybody wants to remodel their homes. Everybody wants to, get something done. But he speaks both English and Spanish, but he obviously prefers everything, if you're learning something or reading a document, he prefers it to be in Spanish. And you run into a lot with a lot of Latino business owners. They prefer, these documents, they prefer these workshops in their native language. And so that's something that we're really trying to focus and trying to figure out for 2021 with our Tulsa Latin American Chamber of Commerce. But I will say, Hannah, I love what she said about being involved in the community and being involved in the nonprofit sector. You really do realize kind of the barriers that our immigrant community is facing. So obviously we want the Latino business, but it's like, what are some of the barriers that they're having? And I think nonprofit is definitely the way to go, and figuring out what ways maybe your organization can partner or expand. And it's just literally, I think a lot I've learned from just nonprofit and being involved that way.
And I will add to even kind of piggyback on both of what they're saying, to get involved in these local chambers. And know as small business owners, some may feel that the Tulsa Chamber is, a little bit pricey for them. And, that's a future goal to be able to be a part of the chamber. But we do have local community, more community-based chambers, like the Latin Chamber here. We have the Black Wall Street Chamber, which focuses on African-American businesses and helping them where they're at and helping us focus on our needs. We have the Southwest Tulsa Chamber. And then on top of that, if you live in a different city or in a suburb, all of our suburbs have chambers as well too. And the great thing about chambers, they do what they're designed to do. They're a place for you to go and network. They're a place for you to get training. And even if you can't become a member just yet of the Tulsa Chamber, there are still plenty of programs that they do offer that you can go to as business owners, where you can get the information and even, even more importantly, network to build your relationships that you can call upon later.
Okay, so we're gonna keep this broad and for one more question, and then we're gonna dive specifically into each one of your kind of paths, and we have intentionally brought this panel together for their diversity of resources and knowledge. But one more broad question, time versus money. And I think that's always going to be the balance that people strike or have to deal with whenever they're either a part of a company or starting up their own, which is, what do you undertake for yourself and spend the time on it to save money versus what is absolutely necessary to get rid of off your plate from a professional, which might cost you some money, but it will save you tremendous time. And that cost benefit's important. So I want to leave that open, and this question will lead, I swear, into a little more specifics, but I'm going to leave this open for all four of you.
What I tell our members in our organization, at minimum, 2 people that you need to pay, a CPA, tax accountant, bookkeeping professional. Like, that's just not something that we should really be doing ourselves. Yes, we do it, but.
You're saying I shouldn't wing QuickBooks.
Yeah, I mean, QuickBooks has a great option where it says, add your accountant.
Yeah.
So, yes, if you can pay a CPA, a tax professional, and I know this from experience. My first couple of years, I was mad. I was like, why am I paying all this money to the IRS? I don't have any money to give y'all. And then I met our CPA for our organization, Cindy McGee, with Next Gen Tax Services. And you know what?
I'll second first.
You know what?
She's great.
This year, I didn't pay 1 penny in taxes. So I am an avid believer that you need to get somebody to do your taxes for you. And then you need an attorney. If you are a company that has a lot of legal things, whether it's contracts, whether it is, potential lawsuits, those types of things, get somebody else to do. You need to have an attorney, even if it's a lot of the new thing now with attorneys, especially those that are entrepreneurs themselves, is having like little monthly packages where you can pay $100 a month to get, a document looked at every month or a consultation. So you got to do some research on it, but definitely those are the 2 things that I think need to go on and let someone pay. Everything else, marketing, social media, putting together your own products, I think you can handle it, but those are the 2 for me.
I would just say, in my opinion, for me, website was a big weakness of mine. I have a marketing degree, but really just creating, my own website, I just felt like I was pulling my hair out. And so I just really said what I really had to do. So obviously my job, I'm commission-based. I get paid whenever a deal closes. And when a deal comes across my table, I have to say, okay, how much time is this going to take? How much is my time worth? Is this job worth it? And learning to say no to the deals that really don't align with my missions and values as a business owner. That costs money, but I just empower people 2 things. 1, have a great website. And if you right now it's not in your ballpark to hire someone to have a website, having some sort of social media presence, whether that's a Facebook or an Instagram page, being really authentic on there. I think in today's generation, people are hiring the person because they know that they have any power or any attorney or any commercial broker. Being really, really authentic, I think, and then just yourself across as a brand. I think we can all attest to who we are. It's really the brand above and beyond. So that's my biggest thing. Realizing what is worth your time. Your time is very valuable, and your mind is power. Not spending a whole day doing something that, someone like an accountant or an attorney. That's what we went to school for.
I think I would have said the same thing. I mean, I think Charity, you said it right on, that's exactly where we need to go. But I think now with COVID, I think we should also think about working with maybe even like a social media influencer, helping you to expand your business or kind of get the word out. Instead of you going out and doing all of that yourself, I think there's people that have a lot of following, especially, I'm speaking from the Latino community just because I see that a lot. Businesses are opening up and they almost don't even go with the chambers now. They go straight to a social media influencer and they really get the word out. Like, these people have so many people following them here in the city. So I think a little bit of that would be good right now.
Yeah. I'm gonna, it keeps turning off on me, sorry. I'll take your question in a slightly different way, which is to say, something that I certainly think that you should not externalize, at least initially. And I think small businesses and, well, I think entrepreneurs really externalize kind of too quickly is sales. I think you should be your very first salesperson because you know more about the product and you have more passion for the product than anyone else that you can bring on board. And, you know, in kind of the spirit of like the lean startup methodology, if you cannot explain to somebody why your product solves a problem that they are having and that your solution that you are selling is the one that they need, that is a way to get a lot of information pretty cheaply. Like your pride will probably be hurt, but you will get that information a lot quicker than by externalizing your sales. And even if it is somebody who is more charismatic or it does just have that sales gene, at some level, you have to create your product in such a way that no matter how good or bad a salesperson you are, the value proposition is so clear to somebody that they can see it immediately, right? And if you're really struggling with that, you may not have the product market fit that you think you do.
Great point. Clay, I'll give you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I just yelled.
No, that's a great point. And so I'm in commercial banking. And so, Jared, to your point, the things that come across my desk are more on the larger side, but it's interesting to see on the smaller side, what it takes to get funding right now during COVID is massively different than what it takes during a normal year, I'll be honest. And the resources that we always like to see people leverage is anything and everything within their power. We like to see that the owner, the entrepreneur, all the management has done their diligence, and everything that you guys have said so far rings a bell. There's no right answer for what you third party. I think that's kind of what we just heard. But know your strengths, know what you need to get out is kind of the big thing that we've always seen from the banking standpoint. So it's interesting to hear your comments, and I think that resounds with most people.
Well, let me just say really quickly, being a small business owner, there are so many times I'm mad or frustrated with myself because I didn't do my expense report or I'm a salesperson, so by trade I can talk to a stranger, so like vice to an Eskimo, everyone's my best friend, but like when it gets down to like business plans, I'm like, writing it down, it's tough for me. And for a very long time, I fought against who I actually am. And I would be very, very hard on myself. Why can't I just be more organized? Why can't I just remember to call that person back? And then I really started relying on a great CRM. There's plenty of free options and a really great project management software. There's tons out there. They're all user friendly. Realizing that you don't have to be everything to everyone. And when I started my own business, I didn't realize I had to be, well, I have an accountant, but you have to manage, you have to be your own admin, you have to be your own coach, you have to be your own everything. And you don't really realize how tough that really is. So all of that to say, give yourself some grace because we all didn't really know what it was gonna be like. Probably could be a small business owner or represent a community. And then rely on the people next to you because there are so many times we all wanna just quit. But we can look back on the other side and be really happy and thankful that we didn't, so.
What do you use?
So for my CRM, I use HubSpot, and then for my project management software tool, I'm on a team with one other female, and we use Asana, A-S-A-N-A.
Love Asana.
Those two are great, and just the resources. The nice thing that I like about most services, you can train yourself. If you're familiar, you can go on YouTube and watch videos, but start somewhere. The best software is the one that you start.
Yep.
I'll say that again. The best software is the one that you start and the one that you use. So.
That's great. Well said. Okay, so I'm gonna get a little more specific now, and Jessica, we're gonna start with you. So, did some research. In the past 18 years, the Latino and Hispanic population here in Tulsa has grown from just over 7% to 16.75%. I think it's the quickest growing demographic.
Oh yeah, we love to have babies too.
Moderator did not say that. Verbalize that now. But But that brings up an interesting dynamic that I think all entrepreneurs, but then I want to ask you specifically, need to identify, which is one, know what markets are growing quickly.
Yeah.
And then understand what resources they will be using. If you need to target that for your business, that's something to consider. So with that, how have business owners in that demographic been faring over the past 18 years? Have they actually been seeing a lot of growth? Or do you think that it's still a bit underserved and that's why you're doing the work that you're doing now?
So I feel like that's what I do a lot with Blue Cross, even just the company that I work for. I will say that the Latino businesses are growing, yes, and they're expanding. I've seen, like I talked about Francisco Ibarra, and he keeps opening up more Morelos. And I'm like, he's got them in a couple cities in Tulsa. And so you see that there was such a need. Like when I was a little girl, we had no Latino stores. Like I remember going into, just Walmart or Homeland, I think it was back in the day. And you didn't have anything Latino. There was no products, but there was such a need. And so now you see like Morelos really expanding. And now what I'm seeing a lot of even are Latino PR companies. So obviously that approach is different than working with the American community. And so even with Blue Cross, like we really had to kind of change our approach. It's like, you can't just translate. I feel like a lot of organizations, a lot of companies just want to translate the program or translate, whatever they're doing. But in reality, you do need to have people that look like the community that you're trying to serve to make sure and spread the word for you, but also look over what you're doing. And it's like, you think, oh, this is going to be great for Latinos, it's everything that they want. But in reality, the way you present that message can be so impactful with our community. And relationship building is so different, with the Latino community, you have to build a relationship. You can't go in with a hard sell. And that's what I think a lot of organizations are lacking. They want it, whether it's really, I'm not picking on anybody, but you have to truly build a relationship before you even talk about business with the Latino community. So I think just having that understanding. But yeah, Tulsa's growing, Latino businesses are growing, and I'm just happy to be here. Thank you.
That's great. Charity, we're going to move on to you. So 2020, year for the record books. And I think the diversity issue has continued to be a growing and growing component for businesses, small, large. The larger the business, the more scrutiny I think it has. But there are still recognizable benefits. More research is showing that the diversity and empowerment of underserved communities is still really important. So, how have you been serving that community as of late, particularly with what's been going on, not just close to home, but then nationally?
So I'm a fire starter. So I've always been as a Black woman entrepreneur, I have always been an advocate for Black businesses. And then also diversity inclusion at companies. And Jessica, I'm Jennifer. Sorry, I'm over here.
Jessica, you're right.
I'm over. Look, I got like 10,000 things. I could talk about this question for like 10 days. She hit the nail on the head. When companies are trying to reach minoritized groups, you have to have the community at the table. And if they're not at the table, the messaging is going to be wrong. Case in point, Pepsi a few years ago with that whole Kylie Jenner commercial was a key point. Like it was a disaster, but it was like that because you did not have multicultural PR, marketing, and communication people at the table. And so when our companies here are looking at that, any opportunity, any chance that I can get, that's what I'm pushing. Who is at the table? And it can't always be the same 5 people that you know. You have to be able to reach out beyond your sphere or your circle of people and say, who else can be at this table? Because one thing that we also have to realize, while we may be up here talking in generalized terms about our community, we are not one-dimensional. We are all very different. We, you know, even in the Hispanic community, and if I'm not mistaken, you guys changed your name because the Hispanic Latino population is more than just
Yeah,
the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
exactly.
So,
We rebranded.
yeah, and so I think for our organizations, and that's what I want to push for, and that's what I try to push for, is saying, who else can you bring at the table? There are, our population here is about 14 to 16% African American. At the end of the day, not all African Americans live in North Tulsa. Not all Black-owned businesses are in North Tulsa. We have Black-owned businesses in Jinx, Bixby, South Tulsa, Owasso, and we have leaders. We have Black leaders or people that could potentially be amazing Black leaders in those different communities. So as we're looking through, that's what I always focus on, is how can we bring more than just what I always say, the 5 Black people that we all know in the community to the table. And so that's what I'm always pushing for, have been pushing for, and will continue to push for. From an entrepreneurship standpoint, with Black Women Business Owners of America, we hosted our first year that we started, we hosted in an expo. And we were very intentional on only having Black women entrepreneurs as vendors. And it's not to be discriminatory, but it was to show our community that there are other businesses out here that are excellent. They have great products and services, but they may not know about them, or they may not have access to them, because again, Tulsa is great, but we do have a problem of sticking within our little cliques and in our little circles in our 5-mile radius of our homes, that we don't know about some of these other amazing businesses that are out there. So that's one real big component of Black Women Business Owners of America, is showing the Black women entrepreneurs and helping them get into or get in front of the faces of people that they may not normally be able to get in front of.
Yeah. Follow-up question to that. It's an interesting topic. Do you think that COVID and the time of work from home and kind of these isolated bubbles, has that become more prevalent of sticking to your guns and just going with what you know? Or have people been exploring more options over these past 9 months that you noticed?
I feel like it's still sticking to your guns. However, I think we have another thing going on with the whole centennial coming up with the race massacre. That is really getting people out and saying, okay, what has this city done or changed or improved since the massacre of a whole community of people? And so you have COVID on one hand, but then you have this commemoration that literally the whole city and part of the state is planning on. So I think that's also helping a lot, enough to overshadow anything that would have come across with COVID, that this project is helping to get people out and connected.
Yeah, it's interesting.
A point just to make on that, a follow-up. So this year, we're very fortunate, and actually Clay was in my cohort. We both graduated from the OCCJ, the Oklahoma Center of Community Justice. They do an Inclusive Leadership Institute every year, and I was also fortunate through the Lubbock Taylor Family Foundation to get a partial scholarship. So just talk about the philanthropic community. But I realized as a small business owner with one employee, how do I make my own business diverse? How do I make my own business more inclusive? And even things like, obviously, I'm a cisgender female, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Just talking about that, whether my pronoun usage or when I go into a room and I don't say, oh, hey guys, well, these are not guys, these are 2 females, and just learning how can I be, as an individual, more diverse and more open to be able to create a place to where I can go into communities around people that don't look like me, but they can see that I am being authentic and I'm really trying to be open-minded. I think those little just shifts, those little pivots, is how we as business owners and as entrepreneurs can become a more inclusive and diverse community, to represent not only ourselves, but our fellow community members. I think that's really overlooked. It's just little steps, and obviously, I pay to take the code, but how I use my pronouns and how I say my things, those are all free. And so really it doesn't take much to learn to be more diverse and more inclusive as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. No, and there's a lot of ways we can take that. So I would love to use more time that we can dive into that. But unfortunately, we have 14 minutes left. So I want to make sure we can cover all questions and then get any questions from the audience that we have. So I have one more specific one that's for Clay. And then we're going to open it up a little bit more. So Clay, you're on the spot. Coronavirus. Right?
No pressure, Clay.
I think everyone's looking for money right now in some way, shape, or form. And there doesn't seem to be enough of it going to the places that I think we would all agree we'd want, right? Big banks get bailed out, airlines get bailed out, cruise ship companies get bailed out. When it comes to small businesses, when it comes to individual proprietors, there seems to be just an oversight, right? And I think part of that's real and part of that's perception. So my question to you is, what has Tulsa been doing recently that you can advertise for everyone here to say, hey, you need to be using this to be successful? And then what are some other ones that often get overlooked that you want to bring up? I'm curious myself.
Okay. So I'm going to start with going back to the star of the discussion today was Washington with GEW. So let me say this. I have looked at lots and lots of cities and the way in which they are using the coronavirus relief funds. And what Tulsa County did with their funds was they allocated, in total, it was about $50 million for, I want to say 40 million of it was set aside for small businesses and about 10 million was set aside for nonprofits. That's really, really unique. And that is and has been a real unique opportunity for businesses here in Tulsa. I mean, other cities larger than Tulsa have similar, like orders of magnitude smaller. So just to keep that in mind, you're absolutely right that the PPP loans and the idle loans and name your acronym here, they all came and went very quickly. But there have been those resources. That is not to say that there are enough. I think one of the challenges that we see is we are in a world of, especially in the time of COVID, what it truly has done is I think it has laid bare a lot of the inequalities that we see, that we have probably just lived with. And you hear this talk about the K-shaped recovery, meaning how you come out of this crisis is so dependent on where you started. If you, so folks literally are diverging and some folks are essentially, get to work from home and didn't see wages cut, didn't see anything like that. And some folks truly lost their way of life. There are so many challenges that individuals are facing and that small businesses are facing that in some sense, no amount of money is going to be enough to cover. And so we are truly in the unfortunate position of having to triage quite a lot while also managing a public health crisis and all of the, I guess I'd say kind of the second order effects that have truly been wrought by this crisis. But one of the things that we are looking to do with our remaining funding is to bring in more community engagement. I think the point that was made earlier around who you work with and working with just kind of the same groups of people. One thing that does when you work with, just the same subset of folks is you put blinders on so that you only see the problems that are problems to those specific people. So we work with lots of organizations and lots of very, very big organizations, and they are great and we love them as partners, and they see problems that big organizations see. What we are very intentional about doing now is widening that net, really like how do we lower the barriers to entry so that we can work with nonprofits, we can work with other governmental entities or even some for-profits to address some of those social and economic issues that quite frankly wouldn't even be on our radar if we were just going out and giving funding to some of the, not bemoaning any of the work that they're doing, but the United Way has been fantastic, or CSC is a really incredible local partner. But how are we able to work with partners who are more on the ground? And so that is something that we are, as we're thinking about kind of using our remaining funding, and knock on wood, if there is any additional federal funding coming, I think you'll start to see a lot of that very soon. So stay tuned.
I heard that there's people that still want to have events or try to do things. Is there a consultant or is there services where they can get help from your fund, or there's someone in the city doing that for businesses, or even 36 degrees? They got this right? We're all in here.
Right.
Do you have resources for other organizations or other groups that are trying to do business socially responsible during COVID?
Yeah. Well, I guess I could ask Devin. I mean, when you're doing these here, the one thing I will say is actually the health department's website is really good about narrowing down to say it's not just, if you're a small business. I mean, it really gets granular to the point where it says, if you are a food establishment, then these are the requirements that you need to be hitting, right? You're totally right. We are in this brave new world that none of us fully understand. But yeah, Devin, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. Thank you for saying that too, by the way. Our team has worked closely with the health department just to get guidance and recommendations. We had to come and actually do an audit or an overview as well too, of what our policies and procedures were and how we handle situations like this. And so they've been great to work with. Sarah, she could probably even chime in even more. I don't know if there's any additional feedback you give.
Yeah, they've been great. I think just having a mix of socially distanced mask events and having streaming options, really good streaming options right now.
But you're totally right. And I think something entrepreneurs need to be thinking about is the future is not going to look like February 2020 when this room was packed and nobody was wearing masks. The future is also probably not going to look like April 2020 when none of us were here and we were all singing it. So there are huge ramifications that there have been things that this has laid bare that have presented real business opportunities. I love the fact that I could get beer delivered. That was amazing. But there are also ways in which this crisis has really exposed a lot of the faults that I think, I would probably not go long on online learning platforms because of just the terrible experience that everybody who has kids has had to deal with. So, I think that it is some combination of those two things. And really, I think by sort of managing your risks by saying, what do I do if life goes back to February 2020? And what do I do if life goes to April 2020? Because we know it's going to be somewhere in between the two of those. That is probably the best incomplete way in which you cover those bases.
I would like to also, OSHA is such a good resource. We've had a couple of presentations with OSHA in English and Spanish, but they have literally PowerPoint presentations that you can print out that tell you what you can do if you're, depending on what sector or what you're doing, if it's food, if it's, depending, but it's really resourceful, and they have them in both English and Spanish.
Great point. Well, we have 5 minutes left, so I want to open it up to anyone else who has some questions. If not, I have another question prepped, so don't feel pressured to ask anything, but want to open it up really quick. Any questions for our panelists right now? Okay, so I have a question, and Hannah, I didn't ask you anything specific, but want to get your pulse on this since we're sitting in a co-working space and the commercial real
I
estate.
know where this is going.
real estate has been rocked to its core. And so for any business that's either starting or looking to grow or transition, open up new offices, this is a decision they always have to make is, are they working from home? Are they in the co-work? Are they building something? Are they renting? How have we seen that adjusted in Tulsa? How is the capacity shifted around? And should someone consider, and I know Devin's right there, so you can.
No, no, so just really quick, I want to say, I think for a very long time, our society put an emphasis on your business is important if you have an office. Your business is successful if you can sign a 3-year lease or a 5-year lease or whatever. That's just not the case anymore. I really think COVID flipped everything on its head. I mean, when I saw the owner of our company and his wife was walking around in her pajamas when we were on a Zoom call, I mean, it really just broke down those barriers of who we are 8 to 5 and who we are after 5. And to be totally honest, I think some businesses will go back to that, but the majority of us, there's still, you know what I mean? It's not gonna shut off at 5 like it used to. And so I just really hope that what I love seeing, co-working spaces are filling the gap because it was needed. And just full transparency, what I would make off me leasing, 500 square feet to you for 3 years is I might pay my pipe pass to get there, you know what I mean? And so it's very hard because a lot of brokers, we don't necessarily have the bandwidth and the time, because what it takes us to do 500 square feet and 5,000 square feet, it's truly the same amount of time. But it's really beautiful to know, oh, I can call 36 or I can call the other co-working spaces and they can be a seamless transfer. Because ultimately, back to our original question about Tulsa is relation-based. And if I'm taking care of a client, my hope is in 3 years, they grow out of that co-working space and they might need an office or they might need an industrial place or retail or a warehouse. So it's kind of this crystal ball question, and if I had the answer, I'd probably be on an island somewhere and not in Tulsa. But I just like to tell people who you are, your business is not more serious or taken more seriously if you have an office. There's now no shame in working or working together or working from home. I do like to tell tenants and clients, if you do decide, hey, I think I need a location, hey, I think I need to kind of put this on the radar, brokers are commissioned or paid by the landlord. And so having someone to call to ask those questions, and it goes back to, what do you outsource? We are all experts in our field and we all do these things for a living. And I would say the same thing about you sitting in the room. So being able to rely on your neighbors and other people in other industries and asking for their expertise is so valuable to kind of tread through these next. I think if we can get till 2022, I think businesses will kind of start seeing the future path. At the same time, I'm still doing deals. I mean, I just sold a building right up the street, office user, and it's going to a new office user. So deals are still being done, but in a different way.
Well, that's about all the time we have, and I could dive into so many more topics with all 4 of you. And so I just want to say there is energy in Tulsa. I think we know that. We're sitting in a co-working space. There is a downtown that's being revitalized. We are a resilient Oklahoma community, but I think it's going to take a team. It takes a village to get through this. And so that's why these resources of why Tulsa and why you would start a business or grow it is important. So I think this is indicative of that. I appreciate all your time that you've given today to share that with us. If any of you have any additional questions for them, please, they don't bite. I'm sure you can see that right now. Feel free to ask them more questions. And with that, we will adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Did everyone just put these on our chair?